I couldn't believe what was happening. One minute, I'm in my backyard enjoying a sunny afternoon with some music, snacks, and good friends, just celebrating life. The next thing I know, this woman I've never seen before is standing by my fence, arms crossed, giving us the kind of look that says we're not welcome. I figured maybe she was having a bad day. I smiled and waved. Big mistake. She storms up, yelling over the fence, saying we're being too loud, even though we were just talking and laughing. I tried to stay calm and told her, "This is my house, my backyard. We're just having a small pool party." But that wasn't enough. She kept going on, making comments that didn't sit right. Things like, "People like you don't belong in this neighborhood." That's when I realized this wasn't just about noise. This was about something deeper, something uglier. Then, before I could say another word, she pulls out her phone and starts dialing 911, right in front of us. No hesitation. She says we're disturbing the peace and trespassing. Trespassing? In my own backyard? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My friends went quiet. I felt the energy shift. That familiar knot in your stomach when something innocent starts turning into something serious, for no good reason. As I stood there, listening to her describe me to the dispatcher like I was some kind of threat, I couldn't help but think, how far is she willing to take this? What's going to happen when the cops show up? Will they believe her over me? This wasn't just about a party anymore. This was about being seen as guilty just for existing in the wrong place, in someone else's eyes. And that's when things really started to spiral. Let me back up for a second. I've lived in this neighborhood for almost 5 years. I bought this house with my own money, worked hard for it, and poured a lot into making it feel like home. It's a quiet suburb, mostly families, a few retired folks, and yeah, not a lot of people who look like me. But until now, I've never had any real issues. I keep to myself, say hi to neighbors, cut my lawn, take out the trash like everyone else. Nothing wild. So when I decided to throw a small birthday pool party for my cousin, I didn't think twice. Just a few close friends, some food, music at a decent volume, and good vibes all around. But apparently, that was too much for Karen. I didn't even know her name, still don't. She never introduced herself, never tried to have a conversation, just showed up angry, like we had no right to be enjoying ourselves. It wasn't the music, I'm telling you. It wasn't the number of people, either. We weren't doing anything wrong, but in her eyes, we didn't belong there. That's what made it worse. The fact that she called the police so quickly, so confidently, like she expected them to come and just handle us. As she stood outside the gate still on the phone, I saw a few neighbors peeking through their blinds. One even stepped out to see what was going on. No one said a word, though. They just watched. It felt like we were being judged from every angle, and no one was stepping in. The party vibe was gone. People were nervous. My cousin pulled me aside and whispered, "Yo, maybe we should just shut it down." But I didn't want to let fear win, not in my own space, not like this. Then we heard sirens in the distance. Getting closer. The sirens got louder, and that feeling in my chest, like a weight, just kept growing. Everyone went quiet. You could hear the water dripping from the pool and the low hum of music still playing in the background. I paused. I didn't want anything adding fuel to the fire. Karen stood at the curb like she was proud of what she'd done, phone still in hand, watching like she expected a reward. Her body language said it all, like she was the one protecting the neighborhood from some kind of threat. Except the threat was just a group of friends sharing a birthday cake. 2 squad cars pulled up. Not 1, 2. Lights flashing. Officers stepped out, hands resting on their belts, scanning the yard like they were expecting a fight. That's what chilled me. Their first reaction wasn't confusion, it was caution. And I couldn't help but wonder what she told them on the phone. I walked to the gate slowly, hands visible, heart pounding. My cousin followed behind me, just in case I needed someone to back me up. Before I could say much, Karen jumped in, waving her arms and pointing. "That's him," she said. "That's the one causing all the trouble. They've been disturbing the peace, drinking, being aggressive." Aggressive? No one had even raised their voice. I glanced back at my friends. A couple of them were filming from the patio. Smart. I was glad they were documenting everything. One officer looked at me and asked, "Do you live here?" I nodded and pulled out my ID. "Yeah, this is my house, my backyard. We're just having a birthday party." He took the ID but didn't say much. The other officer started walking the perimeter, like he was inspecting the property, like he didn't believe me. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about one neighbor's complaint. This was about perception, assumptions, and the silent power behind a false 911 call. Inside the house, my aunt was watching from the kitchen window, worry all over her face. My little niece peeked out from behind the curtain, asking if everything was okay. I didn't know what to tell her. The tension was thick. I could feel every set of eyes on me, from the officers, from my friends, from the windows around the neighborhood. Even the breeze felt different, like the air had gone still, just waiting for something to happen. Karen stood with her arms crossed like she had already won. I was standing there in my own yard, but somehow I felt like a stranger. The officer holding my ID asked me more questions. Nothing wild, just basic stuff. My name, how long I'd lived here, what we were doing. But the way he asked, it was like he was looking for cracks in my story, like maybe I wasn't telling the truth. I answered calmly, but inside I was boiling. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a setup. And the worst part? She knew exactly what she was doing. That 911 call wasn't about peace and quiet. It was about control, about sending a message, "You don't belong here." The second officer came back from his little walk around the fence and whispered something to his partner. I couldn't hear what, but I saw the look on his face shift just slightly. Karen noticed it too, and she wasn't happy. She stepped forward and raised her voice again. "You need to do something. They're disturbing the neighborhood. There were people drinking, swearing, being inappropriate. All lies. Complete lies." My friends were stunned, some shaking their heads, others recording quietly from their phones. One of my neighbors, the older guy from across the street, finally stepped outside and walked over. For a second, I thought he was going to help. But then he just stood next to Karen. Didn't say anything, just stood there. That silence said everything. I realized then this wasn't just about her. There were others who felt the same way. They just let her speak for them. The officers moved to the side and started talking to each other. One had my ID. The other was scanning the yard again. Karen kept looking over at them, pushing the story harder. And I just stood there, wondering how far this was going to go. And what they'd decide to do next. Just when I thought things couldn't get more tense, one of the officers got a call on his radio. He stepped aside to respond, turning his back slightly. The other officer was still holding my ID, but now he looked more serious, like something had changed. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I saw the look he gave me shift from questioning to something closer to suspicion. That's when I started to feel like this situation might not end fairly, or safely. Then came the twist I never saw coming. Karen, still fuming, suddenly blurted out, "I've seen him before. He's been sneaking around this neighborhood. This isn't the first time." She pointed at me like I was some kind of criminal. That's when the real damage started. She was no longer just accusing me of noise. Now she was trying to connect me to things I had nothing to do with. It wasn't just offensive. It was dangerous. The officer paused. "Ma'am, do you have proof of that?" he asked, finally pushing back just a little. But her words were already hanging in the air. I could feel my friends behind me getting more anxious. One of them, Jamal, quietly said, "Bro, she's trying to frame you now. This is getting real." I knew he was right. And the worst part was, even if it was a lie, just saying it out loud shifted the tone. At that moment, a third squad car pulled up. Another officer got out, and this one looked like he was more senior. He walked over, took a quick glance at the scene, the pool, the food table, my friends looking nervous, me standing there trying to keep calm. Then he asked, "What's going on here?" Karen rushed to him like she was reporting an emergency. She repeated her new claim, louder this time, more dramatic. And then, without warning, the officer holding my ID looked at me and said, "Sir, I'm going to need you to step over here with me for a moment." My heart dropped. I followed. The officer a few steps toward the front of the yard, trying to stay calm even though my chest was tight. My hands were shaking slightly, not from guilt, but from frustration, from being treated like a suspect in my own backyard. I asked, "What's going on? Why do I need to step aside?" He didn't answer right away, just looked at me like he was still trying to figure something out. Behind me, I could hear Karen still going off, spinning stories louder and faster, hoping someone would believe at least one of them. Then the senior officer stepped in. He'd been listening quietly for a few minutes, and now he motioned everyone to pause. "Let me see the ID," he said, and the younger officer handed it over. The senior one looked at it, looked at me, then turned to Karen and asked, "Are you sure this man doesn't live here?" Karen, now caught up in her own drama, hesitated for the first time. "Well, he said it's his house, but I've never seen him before, and—" Before she could finish, the senior officer cut her off. "That's not what I asked. You called 911 and claimed he was trespassing. Are you saying you know the actual owner of this house?" Silence. She blinked, fumbled. "No, but I just assumed—" He held up a hand. "That's the problem." Then came the twist. One of my friends, who had been recording everything from the patio, stepped forward and said, "You should probably see this." He showed the officer the video, everything from the moment Karen walked up, her comments, her tone, even the false claim she made about me sneaking around. The officer watched closely, expression unreadable. When it was over, he looked at Karen and said, "Ma'am, making a false report to 911 is a serious matter." Karen's face dropped. She started stammering, trying to walk it back. I didn't mean to. I just thought, but the officer wasn't having it anymore. He calmly turned to me, handed back my ID, and said, "You're free to continue your gathering. Sorry for the trouble." As he started talking quietly to the other officers, Karen suddenly snapped, "So he gets to throw a party, and I'm the one getting lectured?" She stormed off, red-faced, muttering under her breath. But just before reaching her car, she turned around and shouted, "You people always play the victim." And then, without missing a beat, my elderly neighbor from the next house over, who hadn't said a word this whole time, stepped out onto his porch and yelled back, "No, you're the one who made yourself the villain." Everything went quiet. Karen drove off, and for the first time in over an hour, I exhaled.